The darkness of space stretched endlessly in all directions. Small points of light dotted the void like tiny diamonds scattered across black velvet. Among these stars, a large ship moved slowly through the emptiness. The USS Valiant cut through space with steady purpose, its hull reflecting the distant starlight. Captain Helen Brooks sat in her command chair on the bridge. Her fingers tapped lightly on the armrest as she watched the viewscreen. The stars ahead looked the same as they had for the past 3 weeks. This patrol route took them along the edge of human territory, far from Earth and the inner colonies. It was quiet out here, too quiet sometimes. "Status report," Helen said. Her voice was calm and measured. She had commanded the Valiant for 5 years now. In that time she had learned that most days in space were boring. The routine became familiar. Check the sensors, monitor the systems, watch for anything unusual. Most of the time, nothing happened. Greg Palmer looked up from his tactical station. The first officer had served with Helen since she took command. He was a solid officer, reliable and smart. "All systems normal, Captain. No contacts on sensors. Everything's quiet in this sector." Helen nodded. She expected that answer. This region of space sat between human territory and the nearest alien civilization. The Zothran Dominion controlled the systems on the far side of this empty zone. Intel reports said the Zothran were aggressive. They had conquered dozens of other species over the past few centuries, but so far, humans and Zothran had never directly encountered each other. Both sides seemed content to keep it that way. Down in engineering, Corinne White checked her readouts for the 3rd time that hour. The chief engineer took pride in keeping the Valiant running smoothly. Every system showed green across her displays. The fusion reactors hummed along at standard output. Life support functioned perfectly. The weapon system stayed in standby mode, ready but not active. Corinne smiled to herself. The crew didn't know the truth about their ship. Only a handful of people aboard understood what the Valiant really was. To most of the 800 crew members, this seemed like an ordinary heavy cruiser. They saw standard fusion reactors, conventional weapons, and normal shield generators. The official specs matched what you would find on any military vessel in the fleet. But Corinne knew better. She had helped install the real systems hidden beneath all that conventional equipment. The Valiant was anything but ordinary. A soft chime interrupted her thoughts. Corinne glanced at her console and frowned. One of the deep sensors had picked up something. She tapped a few commands, bringing up more detail. There, at the edge of sensor range, multiple contacts emerging from hyperspace. Corinne opened a channel to the bridge. "Captain, we've got company." 12 ships just dropped out of hyperspace at bearing 270 Mark III. Distance is 4 million kilometers and closing. On the bridge, Helen sat forward in her chair. "Can you identify them?" "Negative, Captain. The computer doesn't recognize their configuration. Definitely not human design." Greg's fingers flew across his console. "Confirmed. 12 unknown vessels approaching our position. They're not broadcasting any identification signals." Helen felt her heart rate increase slightly. First contact situations were always delicate. Humanity had met a few other species out here among the stars. Some had been friendly, others had not. The key was staying calm and following protocol. "Red alert," she said quietly. "Battle stations, but keep weapons offline. I don't want to appear threatening." Throughout the ship, alarm klaxons sounded. Crew members rushed to their posts. In engineering, Corinne brought additional systems online. The ship's sensors increased their range and sensitivity. Shield generators powered up to standby mode. The Valiant was ready for trouble but not looking for a fight. On the bridge of the lead Zothran warship, Commander Vex studied the viewscreen with interest. The alien vessel ahead didn't look particularly impressive. It was large, perhaps half the size of his flagship, but size didn't always matter. He had encountered small ships with devastating weapons before. "Science Officer Krell, I want a full scan of that vessel," Vex ordered. His voice carried the rough quality common to his species. The Zothran were warriors by nature. Their civilization had spread through conquest and force. They respected strength and despised weakness. Krell hunched over his instruments. His clawed hands moved quickly across the controls. "Initiating deep scan now, Commander. This will take a few moments to penetrate their hull and analyze their systems." Vex nodded. Standard procedure when encountering an unknown species. The scan would tell them everything they needed to know. How much power did the ship generate? What kind of weapons did it carry? How strong were its shields? All of this information would help Vex decide how to proceed. If the aliens were weak, the Zothran would demand their surrender. If they seemed strong, perhaps negotiations would be more appropriate. He watched as the scan data began flowing across Krell's displays. The initial readings showed exactly what he expected. Fusion reactors providing power, conventional missile weapons, basic energy shields, nothing remarkable, nothing threatening. The vessel appears to be using primitive technology, Commander, Krell reported. Their power output is minimal. Weapon systems are outdated by several generations compared to our own. I detect no significant threat. Vex felt a small measure of satisfaction. Another weak species to add to the Dominion's collection. Conquest would be swift and easy. His superiors back at high command would be pleased. But then something changed on Krell's instruments. The science officer made a small sound of confusion. His hands moved faster across the controls. The readings had shifted. Something was wrong. Commander, I'm detecting additional energy signatures. They were hidden beneath the surface readings. The scan is penetrating deeper into the ship's structure and finding systems we didn't detect initially. Vex leaned forward. Explain. The fusion reactors we detected are real, but they're not the ship's primary power source. I'm reading something else deeper in the hull. The energy output is increasing rapidly. Commander, the numbers don't make sense. This much power shouldn't be possible from a ship that size. Warning indicators began flashing on Krell's console. His equipment was struggling to process the incoming data. The scan had gone deeper than expected, penetrating layers of the alien ship that appeared designed to hide what lay beneath. Commander, the scan has reached their core systems. I'm detecting antimatter reactions. No, that's not right. These readings suggest quantum compression, and there's more. Multiple power sources distributed throughout the vessel, each one outputting energy equivalent to our entire fleet combined. The bridge fell silent. Every officer turned to stare at Krell's station. That couldn't be right. No ship could generate that much power. The science officer must have made a mistake. His equipment had malfunctioned, but Krell shook his head. His expression showed genuine fear now. Commander, the readings are accurate. I've run 3 separate confirmations. That ship generates more power than anything in our databases. And their weapons. I'm detecting systems I can't even identify. Energy signatures that defy our understanding of physics. Their shields operate on principles we've never encountered. Vex felt a cold sensation spreading through his chest. He had commanded warships for 20 years. He had faced countless enemies across dozens of worlds, but he had never seen his science officer look frightened before. Show me, Vex demanded. Krell transferred the data to the main view screen. Complex readings filled the display. Energy curves spiked off the scale. Weapon configurations showed power outputs measured in units the Zothran normally reserved for describing stars. Shield harmonics operated across dimensions the Zothran had only theorized about in their most advanced research facilities. The tactical officer spoke up. His voice shook slightly. Commander, if these readings are accurate, that single ship could destroy our entire fleet. All 12 vessels at the same time, with power to spare. Vex stared at the screen. His mind raced through possibilities. This had to be an error, or perhaps the aliens had created false readings to frighten them, but even as he thought it, he knew that wasn't true. The Zothran sensor technology was the best in known space. If Krell said the readings were real, they were real. Who are these creatures? Vex asked quietly. Krell checked his database. The ship's transponder identifies them as human, from a world called Earth. I have no records of this species in our intelligence files. They've never been encountered by the Dominion before. That's impossible. A species with this technology would be known throughout the galaxy. Perhaps they wish to remain unknown, Commander. Perhaps they've been hiding their capabilities. The implication struck Vex like a physical blow. A species this advanced, hiding in the darkness, watching, waiting. What did they want? Why had they concealed their true nature? And most important, what would they do now that the Zothran had discovered their secret? Aboard the Valiant, alarms sounded in multiple locations. Helen watched as Greg Palmer's expression changed from curious to concerned to alarmed in the space of a few seconds. "Captain, we're being scanned. Deep penetration scan. It's going through our hull plating and analyzing our internal systems." Helen cursed under her breath. The one thing they had tried to avoid had just happened. For decades, humanity had maintained a careful deception. They had built ships that looked weak on the outside while hiding incredible power within. The goal was simple. If other species thought humans were primitive, they would leave them alone. Earth could develop in peace, building its strength without interference. But now that strategy had failed. The aliens had seen through the disguise. They knew the truth. "How deep did the scan penetrate?" Helen asked. Karen's voice came through the comm system. "All the way to the core systems, Captain. They saw everything. Antimatter reactors, the quantum compression chambers, the probability weapons, all of it." Helen took a deep breath. Years of planning had just collapsed in a matter of seconds. Earth Command had feared this day would come eventually. Every officer on the Valiant had trained for this scenario, but training was different from reality. Communications open a channel to the alien fleet, all frequencies. The communications officer worked his controls. "Channel open, Captain." Helen stood from her chair. She straightened her uniform and faced the view screen. Whatever happened next would shape humanity's future among the stars. "Attention, alien vessels. This is Captain Helen Brooks of the United Earthship Valiant. You have just conducted an unauthorized deep scan of our vessel. This is considered an act of aggression under human law." She paused, letting her words sink in. "Your scan has revealed information we had chosen to keep private. However, since you now know the truth, let me be clear about your situation. This ship alone possesses enough firepower to eliminate your entire fleet in approximately 45 seconds. I'm not interested in fighting, but if you force the issue, you will not survive." On the Zothran bridge, Vex listened to the transmission. The human female spoke calmly without apparent fear. Her words were a simple statement of fact. She wasn't threatening. She was explaining reality. Vex had been in combat long enough to recognize a warrior when he encountered one. This captain wasn't bluffing. She meant every word. "Commander, we should withdraw," his tactical officer suggested quietly. "Our mission parameters didn't anticipate encountering a superior force. We have no strategic objective that justifies suicide." Vex knew his officer was right, but Zothran culture made retreat difficult. They were predators, warriors. Backing down from anyone, especially a species they had never heard of, would bring shame. His superiors would question his courage. His crew would lose respect for him, but dying for pride seemed equally foolish. Before Vex could respond, one of his junior officers made the decision for him. Torax was young, barely into his second decade of service. He had joined the crew only months earlier, and like many young Zothran, he had been raised on stories of their species' greatness. The idea of retreating from anyone was unthinkable to him. Torax's hand moved to his weapons console. He keyed in a firing solution and launched a plasma torpedo before anyone could stop him. "Torpedo away," Torax announced proudly. "Glory to the Dominion." Every officer on the bridge turned to stare at the young fool. Vex felt ice form in his veins. They had just attacked a vastly superior enemy. Everything the human captain had said about avoiding conflict no longer mattered. Torax had started a war. The plasma torpedo streaked across space. It was one of the Zothran's most powerful weapons. The warhead carried enough destructive force to crack a small moon. Against most ships it would be devastating. Aboard the Valiant, warning alerts sounded. Greg Palmer called out the incoming threat. "Torpedo inbound. Impact in 15 seconds. Helen watched the tactical display. One of the alien ships had fired on them, so much for avoiding conflict. "Maintain shields at current level. Let it hit us. I want them to see what they're dealing with." Karen's voice came through the comm. "Captain, are you sure? We could shoot it down easily." "No, let it come. Sometimes a demonstration is worth more than words." The seconds counted down. The bridge crew watched tensely. They trusted their captain, but watching a weapon approach without defending against it went against every instinct. The torpedo struck the Valiant's shield's dead center. For a brief moment, energy flared around the impact point. Brilliant light filled the view screen, then it faded. When visibility returned, the Valiant hung in space exactly as before, completely undamaged. The shields hadn't even flickered. Helen allowed herself a small smile. Communications, make sure the aliens have a clear view of our ship. They're watching, Captain. Good. Greg, drop the masking protocols. Show them what we really are. Greg hesitated only a moment. Aye, Captain. Dropping masks now. Throughout the Valiant, systems that had been concealed for years came online. The outer hull panels began to shift. Layers of ordinary-looking armor plating slid aside. Beneath them, crystalline matrices became visible. These structures channeled energy from the ship's core to every part of the vessel. Additional sections extended from the main hull. Weapon ports opened along the entire length of the ship, hundreds of them, each one capable of unleashing destruction that would have seemed impossible moments before. The Valiant seemed to grow larger as its true form emerged from beneath the disguise. Energy readings spiked across every spectrum. The power flowing through the ship became visible to the naked eye. Blue and white light traced patterns across the hull. The space around the Valiant seemed to shimmer as the ship's shields reached full strength. These weren't ordinary force fields. They bent reality itself, creating layers of protection that existed partially in other dimensions. The temperature in the surrounding space dropped measurably. The Valiant was drawing in ambient radiation, converting it to useful energy. Stars in the distance seemed to dim slightly as the ship pulled power from their light. Commander Vex watched the transformation in stunned silence. His instruments had told him the truth about the human ship, but seeing it with his own eyes was different. The vessel before him wasn't just powerful, it was beautiful in a terrible way, like watching a predator prepare to strike. "What have we done?" Vex whispered. Krell couldn't tear his eyes away from his sensors. "Commander, the energy output has increased by a factor of 100. No, 200, it's still climbing. Their weapons are charging. Multiple targeting locks are forming on our fleet." The tactical officer's voice cracked. "Commander, we need to do something, now." But what could they do? Running would take time. Their ships weren't fast enough to escape whatever the humans had. Fighting was pointless. Surrender seemed like the only option, but would the humans accept it after Torex's attack? Helen stood on her bridge, hands clasped behind her back. She watched the alien fleet carefully. They hadn't moved, hadn't fired again. They were frozen, trapped between pride and survival. "Greg, target their weapons systems. All 12 ships. Show me firing solutions, but don't launch yet." Palmer worked quickly. "Targeting locks acquired, ready to fire on your command." Helen opened the channel again. Her voice remained calm, but now it carried an edge of steel. "Alien vessels, one of your ships fired on us. That was a mistake. As you can see, your weapons are no threat to us. However, our weapons are very much a threat to you." She let that sink in for a moment. "I am going to demonstrate what happens when you attack humanity. Watch carefully." Helen pointed to a spot of empty space far from both fleets. "Greg, select a target, make it something impressive." "How about that asteroid, Captain? The large one at bearing 352. Helen looked at the tactical display. The asteroid was roughly 5 kilometers across, a solid chunk of rock and metal floating in the darkness. "Perfect. Fire when ready." Greg's fingers moved across his console. One of the Valiant's main weapons came online. The ship's entire frame vibrated slightly as enormous power flowed into the weapons system. On the exterior hull, one of the larger emitters began to glow. A beam of pure energy lanced out from the Valiant. It didn't look like a laser or a particle beam. The space the beam passed through seemed to crack, as if reality itself was breaking. The beam crossed millions of kilometers in less than a second. It struck the asteroid dead center. The asteroid didn't explode. It didn't shatter into pieces. It simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there, a massive chunk of ancient rock that had orbited in that position for millions of years. The next moment there was nothing, not debris, not dust, just empty space. But the weapon didn't stop there. The beam continued past where the asteroid had been. It punched through space-time itself. A rift opened in the fabric of reality. Through the tear, different stars were visible. The beam had created a window into another part of the galaxy, thousands of light years away. The rift lasted only 3 seconds before it sealed. When it closed, space returned to normal, but everyone who witnessed it understood what they had seen. The humans hadn't just destroyed an asteroid. They had demonstrated the ability to tear holes in reality, to manipulate the fundamental forces that held the universe together. Aboard every Zothran ship, absolute silence reigned. Crew members stared at their screens in disbelief. Hardened warriors who had faced death countless times found themselves unable to speak. They had just watched a weapon that defied everything they thought they knew about physics and warfare. Torex, the young officer who had fired the torpedo, collapsed at his station. His body shook with tremors. What had he done? His act of bravado had nearly gotten everyone killed. And for what? To prove Zothran courage, to show strength. Instead, he had revealed their weakness. It exposed how utterly outmatched they were. Vex found his voice, though it came out as barely a whisper. "Krell, did you record that?" "Yes, Commander. Every sensor we have captured the data, though I'm not sure our scientists will believe it." "Send it to High Command, immediately. They need to know what we've encountered." Krell transmitted the data. Within seconds, the information was racing through subspace toward the Zothran home systems. It would take hours to arrive, but when it did, everything would change. The Dominion's understanding of the galaxy had just been shattered. Helen watched the alien fleet. They still hadn't moved. Good. They were smart enough to recognize when they were beat. "Open the channel again." "Channel open, Captain. Commander of the alien fleet, I don't know your name, I don't know your species, but I know you're a warrior. I can see it in how you handle your ships. So I'm going to speak to you as one warrior to another." Helen's voice softened slightly, but lost none of its authority. "My people, humanity, we didn't want this. We've been out here among the stars for decades. We could have conquered half the galaxy if we wanted, but we didn't. We chose to hide our strength, to appear weak and harmless. Do you know why?" She paused. "Because we wanted peace. We wanted to be left alone to develop our civilization without constantly fighting wars. We built overwhelming force not to conquer, but to ensure no one could threaten our home. Every human ship is like this one. Are stronger, much stronger." Vex listened to every word. Understanding began to dawn. The humans weren't conquerors, they were defenders. They had built themselves into an unbeatable force, not out of aggression, but out of fear. Fear that someone would do to them what the Zothran had done to dozens of other species. Helen continued. "Your scan revealed our secret. Now the galaxy will know the truth about humanity. That changes things. We can't hide anymore. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to take your ships and leave. You're going to return to your people and tell them what you learned here. Tell them that humans exist. Tell them we're powerful. And most importantly, tell them we don't want war, but if someone forces us to fight, we will end them." She leaned closer to the screen. "I'm offering you something precious, Commander. I'm offering you and your crew the chance to live, to go home to your families, to survive this day. All you have to do is leave. Power down your weapons, turn your ships around, and go. Do we have an understanding?" On the Zothran bridge, every eye turned to Vex. The commander sat motionless for long seconds. He thought of his daughter studying at the military academy. She dreamed of following in his footsteps. If he died here, would she still join the fleet? Would she spend her life seeking revenge against an enemy she could never defeat? And what of his crew? These warriors had served with honor. They deserved to see their homes again. Their families deserved to see them return alive. Pride was important. Honor mattered, but wisdom mattered more. A warrior who died for nothing accomplished nothing. Vex made his decision. He opened a channel to his fleet. "All ships, this is Commander Vex. Power down weapon systems. Prepare to withdraw. We are leaving this sector immediately." Protests erupted from several of his officers, but Vex silenced them with a gesture. "We came here to explore and assess. We have done both. We learned that humanity exists and that they are far beyond our capability to challenge. That intelligence is worth more than all our lives. High Command needs this information. We will deliver it. Anyone who disagrees can note their objection in the official log, but we are leaving. Now." One by one, the Zothran warships powered down their weapons. They began to turn, preparing to enter hyperspace and retreat to their own territory. It was the most difficult order Vex had ever given. But as he watched his ships begin to withdraw, he felt a strange sense of relief. They would live, they would return home, and they would carry knowledge that might prevent a catastrophic war. Helen watched the alien ships retreat on her view screen. She felt the tension draining from her shoulders. The crisis had passed. No one had died, Both sides walked away from this encounter. That was the best possible outcome. "Stand down from red alert," she ordered. "Maintain shields and sensors at elevated levels until they're out of range, but no hostile actions." Greg looked at her with a mixture of admiration and relief. "That was well handled, Captain." "We'll see," Helen replied. "We just changed the galaxy. The secret's out. Every species out here is going to hear about this within days. Some will want to be our friends. Others will see us as a threat. Either way, humanity's isolation is over." Karen's voice came through the comm. "Captain, I'm already detecting increased communications traffic in this sector. Word is spreading fast." "Expected. Compile everything that happened here. Full logs, sensor data, communications records. Earth Command is going to want a complete report." "Already on it, Captain." Helen sat back in her chair. She felt exhausted suddenly. The adrenaline was wearing off. "Greg, you have the bridge. I'll be in my ready room. I need to write a message to Earth. They're going to want to hear this from me directly." As Helen left the bridge, she thought about what she would tell Earth Command. A single scan had changed everything. The masquerade was over. Humanity could no longer pretend to be weak. They would have to navigate a galaxy full of species that now knew the truth. Some would fear them. Others would respect them. Many would want to test them to see if the rumors were real. In her ready room, Helen sat at her desk and began composing her report. She chose her words carefully. This message would be studied and analyzed by historians for generations. The day humanity revealed itself to the galaxy. The moment when everything changed. And it had all started with a simple scan. An act of routine intelligence gathering that exposed a secret decades in the making. Helen almost laughed at the irony. Humanity had prepared for every possible first contact scenario, except the one where someone accidentally discovered the truth. As she wrote, Helen wondered about the alien commander. He had made the right choice. Walking away from a fight you couldn't win was wisdom, not cowardice. She hoped his people would see it that way. She hoped they would take the warning seriously and spread it to others. Peace through strength. That had always been humanity's strategy. Now the galaxy would see if it worked. Far across the galaxy, in the heart of the Zothran Dominion, Admiral Zarn sat in his command center when the transmission arrived. The building stood at the center of the capital city, a massive structure of dark metal that reflected the harsh light of their red sun. Inside his office, screens covered every wall. Each one showed different parts of the Dominion's vast military network. Zarn was old by Zothran standards. He had served in the fleet for 40 years. He had commanded ships in 20 major campaigns. He had watched the Dominion grow from a regional power to one that controlled hundreds of star systems. Nothing surprised him anymore, or so he thought. The priority alert flashed on his main screen, data from Commander Vex, marked urgent. Zarn opened the file and began reading. His expression, normally stern and controlled, shifted to confusion, then disbelief, then something approaching fear. He read the report 3 times. Each time he hoped he had misunderstood. Each time the words remained the same: a human vessel, technology beyond Dominion capabilities. Weapons that could tear holes in space-time itself. A single ship that could destroy an entire fleet. Zarn opened the attached sensor data. The computer translated the raw readings into visual formats. Energy output graphs spiked off the scale. Weapon power measurements exceeded anything in the Dominion's arsenal by orders of magnitude. Shield configurations operated on principles Zothran science hadn't even theorized yet. This couldn't be real. It had to be a malfunction. Or a trick. Perhaps the humans had created false sensor readings to frighten Vex, but as Zarn examined the data more closely, he realized it was authentic. The readings came from multiple ships using different sensor types. They all showed the same impossible truth. Humanity was far more advanced than anyone had suspected. They had been hiding in plain sight, pretending to be primitive while building weapons of incredible power. And now the secret was out. Zarn activated his personal communicator. Summon the High Council. Emergency session. Immediate priority. Within an hour, the council chambers filled with the Dominion's most important leaders. Military commanders sat alongside political leaders and scientific advisors. They all wore expressions of concern. Emergency sessions were rare and never brought good news. Zarn stood at the center of the chamber. He activated the holographic display. The image of the Valiant appeared above them, rotating slowly. It showed the human ship in its true configuration, weapons extended and power systems visible. "Members of the High Council," Zarn began. 12 hours ago, Commander Vex and his expedition fleet encountered an unknown species calling themselves humans. What I'm about to show you will change everything we thought we knew about the galaxy. He played the recorded footage. The Council watched in silence as the Valiant transformed. They saw the weapons charge. They witnessed the demonstration as the human ship erased an asteroid from existence and tore a hole between 2 points in space. When the footage ended, the chamber remained silent. No one spoke. No one moved. They were all processing what they had seen. Finally, one of the senior military commanders found his voice. "This must be an isolated case. One experimental ship. Perhaps they put all their resources into building a single impressive vessel to intimidate us." Zarn shook his head. "That's what I hoped as well, but look at what the human captain said." He replayed Helen's words. She stated clearly that all human ships have similar capabilities. Some are even stronger. Our intelligence division has been analyzing this claim. If the humans were bluffing, they wouldn't make such a specific statement. It could be easily disproven. Another council member spoke up. "How is this possible? We've never heard of these humans before. Where did they come from?" "Our archives contain minimal information about them. They appeared in this region of space approximately 40 years ago. They established a few colonies but kept to themselves. All reports suggested they were using conventional technology. Nothing remarkable, nothing threatening. So they've been deceiving us for decades." "Deceiving everyone," Zarn corrected. "We've checked with our intelligence contacts in other civilizations. No one knew the truth about humanity. They've been hiding their capabilities from the entire galaxy." A scientific advisor leaned forward. "Why? What's their purpose? If they have this kind of power, why not use it? They could have conquered half the known galaxy by now." Zarn considered the question. He had been thinking about it since he first read Vex's report. The human captain explained it herself. They built overwhelming force to ensure their safety, not to conquer but to prevent anyone from threatening them. Think about it from their perspective. They emerge into a galaxy full of aggressive species like ourselves. They see the Dominion conquering other civilizations. They watch the endless conflicts between the Arkelian collective and various neighbors. What would you do in their position? "Hide," the scientific advisor said quietly. "Build strength in secret while appearing weak. Let everyone else fight among themselves while you grow powerful enough that no one can touch you." Exactly. Actually a brilliant strategy, and it worked until now. The military commander who had spoken earlier stood up. "What are the implications for the Dominion? Are they a threat to us?" Zarn pulled up additional displays. "Our strategic analysis team has been running simulations since this data arrived. The results are sobering. If the humans decided to attack us, we couldn't stop them. Not with conventional forces. Even if we mobilized our entire fleet, the technology gap is too wide. We would need to develop entirely new weapon systems just to have a chance of defending ourselves. That would take years, maybe decades. So we're defenseless against them. Against an all-out attack, yes, but the humans gave us a gift. They revealed their power while simultaneously offering peace. The captain could have destroyed Vex's entire fleet. She had justification. One of our ships fired on them, but she chose restraint. She gave them a warning and let them leave. That tells us something important about human intentions. A political leader spoke from across the chamber. It tells us they're not conquerors, but it also tells us they're willing to use force if threatened. We need to be very careful how we proceed." "Agreed," Zarn said. "I'm recommending immediate changes to Dominion policy regarding human space. All ships should avoid their territory unless specifically invited. No aggressive actions. No provocations. We treat them as equals or perhaps even superiors until we better understand their society. You want us to show weakness to an unknown species. I want us to show wisdom. There's a difference between weakness and recognizing superior strength. The Dominion has survived for centuries because we know when to fight and when to negotiate. This is clearly a time for negotiation." The council debated for another hour. various members proposed different approaches. Some wanted to try stealing human technology. Others suggested forming alliances with other species to balance human power. A few argued for accelerated military development to close the technology gap. In the end, Zarn's recommendation won approval. The Dominion would adopt a non-aggressive stance toward humanity. They would attempt to establish diplomatic contact. They would share what they learned with allied species as a warning. And they would begin a long-term research program to understand the science behind human technology. As the council session ended, Zarn remained behind, staring at the holographic image of the Valiant. Something about the situation troubled him, not the human power itself. That was concerning but manageable. No, something else bothered him. If humans had been hiding for decades, they must have had a plan for when their secret was eventually discovered. This couldn't have caught them by surprise. They would have anticipated this moment and prepared for it, which meant the encounter with Vex might have been just the opening move in a much larger strategy. What was humanity really planning? What came next? Back aboard the Valiant, Helen finished her report to Earth Command and sent it through the secure FTL communications network. It would reach Earth in a few hours. Then the real work would begin. Diplomats would need to engage with dozens of alien species. The military would need to adjust their deployments now that their true capabilities were known. Scientists would probably be excited to finally share some of their discoveries with the wider galaxy. Helen walked back to the bridge. The ship had returned to its disguised configuration, but everyone knew it didn't matter anymore. The secret was out. They were flying the same patrol route, but everything had changed. Greg Palmer stood from the command chair as Helen entered. "Captain on the bridge." "As you were." "Status? We're tracking the Zothran fleet. They've maintained their withdrawal course. No indication they plan to return. Long-range sensors are picking up increased communications traffic throughout this sector. Multiple alien species are chatting back and forth. We're definitely the topic of conversation." Helen nodded. She had expected that. "What about our own communications?" "We've received preliminary acknowledgement from Earth Command. They're analyzing your report. Fleet Command is preparing new orders for all ships in the border regions. We should receive updated instructions within 12 hours. Good. Maintain alert status, but don't do anything that could be interpreted as aggressive. We've made our point. Now we see how the galaxy responds." Helen sat in her command chair and pulled up the tactical display. It showed their position along with known locations of various alien species. Red markers indicated the Zothran Dominion. Blue showed the Arkelian Collective. Green represented several smaller civilizations. And now, whether they wanted it or not, humanity would take its place among them. She thought about the young Zothran officer who had fired that torpedo. Torax, she had heard someone call him on their open channel. She wondered what would happen to him. In human military, firing without orders would result in serious consequences. But the young officer might have actually done everyone a favor. His impulsive action had forced the confrontation. It brought everything into the open. No more hiding, no more deception, just honest interaction between species who now understood each other's capabilities. Karen's voice interrupted her thoughts. "Captain, I'm detecting multiple ships entering the sector, not Zothran, different configurations. They're broadcasting identification signals. Looks like representatives from at least 6 different species. Are they approaching our position?" "Negative. They're maintaining distance but clearly observing us. I think they want to see the human ship everyone's talking about." Helen almost smiled. Word had spread fast. Aliens were coming to look at them like tourists visiting a zoo. "Let them watch. Keep shields up and sensors active, but no aggressive actions. If any of them try to communicate, route it to my station." Over the next several hours, more ships arrived. Some kept their distance. Others approached cautiously, clearly curious but nervous. Helen responded to a few communication attempts with brief, polite messages. She confirmed that humans existed and were open to peaceful contact. She provided coordinates for Earth's diplomatic channels, and she gently but firmly warned that humanity valued its privacy and would respond to any threats with overwhelming force. By the time Helen's shift ended, 17 alien vessels from 9 different species had passed through the sector. None had been hostile. Most seemed simply curious or cautious. A few had transmitted requests for formal diplomatic discussions. As Helen prepared to leave the bridge for some rest, Greg stopped her. "Captain, what do you think happens next? I mean long term. How does this change things for humanity?" Helen considered the question carefully. "Honestly, I don't know. We've been preparing for this day since we first left Earth. We built our strength in secret, hoping we'd never need to reveal it. Now we have. Maybe it works out. Maybe we become respected members of the galactic community. Maybe we even help bring some stability to all these species who spend so much time fighting each other. Or they see us as a threat, they band together against us. We end up in exactly the conflict we were trying to avoid. It depends on what we do next and how the galaxy reacts." "No pressure then," Greg said with a slight smile. "No pressure," Helen agreed. "Get some rest, Greg. Tomorrow we'll probably get our new orders. Things are going to get interesting." As Helen walked to her quarters, she passed crew members in the corridors. They looked at her with expressions mixing pride and concern. Everyone aboard understood what had happened. They had revealed humanity's secret. They had changed the galaxy. Now they would have to live with the consequences. In her quarters, Helen sat on her bed and pulled up a photo on her personal display. Her family. Her husband and 2 children back on Earth. They were the reason she did this job, to keep them safe. To ensure humanity had a future among the stars. She had succeeded in that mission today. The Zothran knew humans were strong. They would spread that word to others. Future encounters would be different because of what happened here. Aliens would approach humanity with respect, not contempt. They would think twice before threatening human territory or colonies. But Helen also knew this was just the beginning. Revealing their power solved one problem while creating many others. Now humanity had to figure out how to use that power responsibly, how to interact with dozens of alien species as equals, how to maintain peace while remaining strong enough to deter aggression. These were questions far above her rank. Diplomats and politicians would make those decisions, but Helen and the Valiant would have to live with the results. They would patrol these borders, represent humanity to alien species, and potentially fight if diplomacy failed. Helen lay down, still in her uniform. She was too tired to change. Her mind replayed the day's events. The scan, the revelation, the demonstration, Commander Vex's wise decision to withdraw, the young officer's foolish attack, and Helen's choice to show mercy instead of vengeance. She wondered if she had made the right calls. Time would tell. For now, she needed rest. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new dangers. As Helen drifted toward sleep, her last conscious thought was simple. The galaxy had learned the truth about humanity. Now everyone would see what kind of species humans really were. Not conquerors, not victims, just people trying to survive and thrive among the stars. People with the strength to defend themselves and the wisdom to choose peace when possible. The moment aliens scanned the human warship, chaos had broken out. But from that chaos, perhaps something better could emerge. A new understanding, a different kind of relationship between species, maybe even real peace instead of the fragile tensions that had defined the galaxy for so long. Helen closed her eyes and let sleep take her. The universe would still be there tomorrow, and the Valiant would be ready for whatever came next. 3 days had passed since the encounter. The USS Valiant continued its patrol route, but nothing felt the same. Ships from various alien species passed through the sector regularly now. Some came to observe. Others brought diplomatic messages. A few simply wanted to confirm that the stories they had heard were true. Helen stood in her ready room, reviewing the latest communications from Earth Command. The orders were clear but complex. Humanity was stepping out of the shadows. Every ship in the fleet had received authorization to drop their masking protocols when appropriate. The era of hiding was over. But with that change came new responsibilities. Earth Command wanted detailed reports on every alien contact. They needed information about how different species were reacting to the revelation. Intelligence analysts were building profiles of potential allies and possible threats. The diplomatic corps was working overtime to establish formal channels with dozens of civilizations. A chime at her door interrupted Helen's reading. "Come in." Greg Palmer entered, carrying a data pad. His expression was troubled. Captain, we've received a communication from the Archelian Collective. They're requesting a face-to-face meeting. Their ambassador wants to come aboard the Valiant. Helen set down her tablet. The Archelian Collective was one of the larger powers in this region of space. They had been in a cold war with the Zothran Dominion for over 2 centuries. Intelligence reports suggested they were calculating and cautious, but not overtly aggressive. What's their stated purpose for the meeting? They want to discuss mutual interests, possible cooperation. The message was polite but firm. They're sending a small diplomatic vessel. It will arrive in 6 hours. What do you think? Helen asked. She valued Greg's opinion. He had good instincts about people, whether human or alien. Greg considered the question. I think they see an opportunity. The Zothran are their biggest rival. Now they've learned that humans can easily defeat Zothran forces. They probably want to explore an alliance. Use our strength to balance against Zothran power. That's what I think too, which means we need to be careful. We don't want to get pulled into their conflicts. Do we refuse the meeting? Helen shook her head. No, we accept. But we make it clear from the start that humanity isn't looking for military alliances. We're open to trade, cultural exchange, peaceful cooperation, but we're not mercenaries for hire. Understood. I'll send the reply and prepare to receive their delegation. 6 hours later, the Archelian diplomatic vessel arrived. It was small and elegant, designed more for comfort than combat. The ship took up position near the Valiant and requested permission to dock. Helen watched from the bridge as the Archelian shuttle approached. She had changed into her formal uniform, the one with all the decorations and insignia. First impressions mattered in diplomacy. She wanted the Archelians to see a professional, confident representative of humanity. The docking procedure went smoothly. Helen made her way to the docking bay with an honor guard of 6 Marines. They stood at attention as the airlock opened and the Archelian delegation emerged. The Archelians were tall and slender with pale blue skin and large eyes. They moved with graceful precision. The leader of the delegation wore robes of deep purple marked with silver symbols. He approached Helen and performed a formal bow. Captain Brooks, I am Ambassador Talon of the Archelian Collective. Thank you for receiving us. His voice was smooth and cultured. He spoke flawless English, probably using a translation device. Helen returned the bow. Welcome aboard the Valiant, Ambassador Talon. I hope your journey was comfortable. Very much so. Your ship is impressive even from the outside, though I suspect the exterior barely hints at its true capabilities. Helen smiled slightly. Perhaps we could discuss that in more comfortable surroundings. I've prepared a conference room for our meeting. She led the delegation through the corridors. Helen noticed how the Archelians studied everything they passed. They were gathering intelligence, trying to learn whatever they could about human technology and capabilities. She had expected that. The conference room was simple but professional. A long table with comfortable chairs. Displays on the walls showing neutral images of Earth and various human colonies. Nothing classified. Nothing that revealed operational details. Once everyone was seated, Ambassador Talon got straight to business. Captain Brooks, let me be direct. The entire galaxy is talking about your encounter with the Zothran fleet. We have reviewed the sensor data that was leaked, the demonstration of your weapons' capabilities, the revelation of your true technology level. It has created quite a stir. I imagine it has. The Archelian Collective has maintained a difficult balance with the Zothran Dominion for many years. They are aggressive expansionists. We are more cautious and defensive. The balance has kept us from open war, but it has also prevented real peace. Your emergence changes that balance significantly. Helen leaned forward. Ambassador, let me be equally direct. I understand what you're hoping for. You want to know if humanity will ally with the Archelian Collective against the Zothran. The answer is no. Talon's expression didn't change, but Helen sensed disappointment. May I ask why? The Zothran are conquerors. They have subjugated dozens of species. Surely humanity sees the threat they represent. We see the threat clearly, but we also see that getting involved in your conflict serves no purpose for humanity. We're not interested in conquest. We're not interested in choosing sides in wars that don't concern us. We revealed our strength to prevent others from attacking us, not to become the galaxy's police force. Then what are you interested in, Captain? Peace, trade, cultural exchange. We want to develop relationships with all species who approach us peacefully. That includes both the Arkelian Collective and the Zothran Dominion. We're willing to be friends with everyone, but we won't be enemies with anyone unless they force the issue. Talon was quiet for a moment. A noble position, but perhaps naive. The galaxy is not a peaceful place. Eventually, you will be forced to choose sides. Perhaps, but that day isn't today. And when it comes, if it comes, humanity will make its own choices based on our own interests, not because we were recruited into someone else's conflict. The ambassador studied Helen carefully. She met his gaze without flinching. She meant every word she had said. Earth Command had been clear in their instructions. Humanity would remain neutral in existing conflicts. They would build their own relationships and alliances based on mutual benefit, not military necessity. I see, Talon said finally. Then perhaps we can discuss other forms of cooperation, trade agreements, scientific exchanges, cultural programs. Now you're speaking my language, Helen said with a genuine smile. Those are exactly the kinds of relationships humanity wants to build. They spent the next 2 hours discussing possibilities. The Arkelians had resources humanity needed, rare minerals found in their territory, biological compounds useful for medicine, cultural artifacts and knowledge accumulated over thousands of years. In return, humanity could offer technology transfers in carefully selected areas, not weapons, not military systems, but improvements in agriculture, medicine, and industrial processes. By the time the meeting ended, both sides had agreed to recommend formal trade negotiations between their governments. It wasn't the military alliance Talon had hoped for, but it was a foundation for peaceful cooperation. As Helen escorted the Arkelian delegation back to their shuttle, Talon paused at the airlock. Captain Brooks, one more question if I may. Your species has been hiding its capabilities for decades. Why reveal them now? You could have continued the deception. Helen considered how much to tell him. One of my crew made a calculation recently. He figured out that keeping the secret was becoming more difficult and more risky. As humanity expanded, we would encounter more species. Someone would eventually discover the truth through accident or deliberate investigation. Better to control the revelation ourselves than have it exposed at the worst possible moment. Wise, Talon acknowledged, though it does make one wonder what other secrets humanity might be keeping. Every civilization has secrets, Ambassador. The key is knowing which ones to keep and which ones to share. After the Arkelians departed, Helen returned to the bridge. Greg was reviewing sensor logs from the meeting. Well, how did it go? About as expected. They wanted a military alliance. We declined politely, but we opened the door for trade and cultural exchange. Earth Command should be pleased. That's one down. We've got 3 more diplomatic requests waiting. The Venturi Republic, the Kuresh Coalition, and someone calling themselves the Independent Traders Alliance. Helen sighed. Schedule them, spread them out over the next week. And make sure intelligence runs background checks on all of them before the meetings. The next few days followed a similar pattern. Diplomatic delegations arrived. They met with Helen. They expressed interest in various forms of cooperation. Some were genuine. Others were clearly fishing for information or trying to manipulate humanity into their own conflicts. Helen handled each meeting with the same approach. Polite but firm. Open to peaceful cooperation. Absolutely refusing any military entanglements. It was exhausting work but necessary. Humanity was establishing its position in the galactic community. These early interactions would shape relationships for decades to come. Meanwhile, back in Zothran space, Commander Vex faced his own challenges. He had returned to the Dominion capital to report directly to the High Council. The meeting had been difficult. Some council members praised his wisdom in withdrawing. Others questioned his courage. A few suggested he should have fought despite the odds. Vex had defended his decision calmly. He explained that dying for pride would have accomplished nothing. Surviving to bring back intelligence about humanity served the Dominion's interests. The debate had gone on for hours, but eventually the council accepted his reasoning. Now Vex had a new assignment. The High Council had created a special division focused entirely on humanity. Their mission was to learn everything possible about human culture, technology, and intentions. Vex would lead this division. His experience from the encounter made him the logical choice. Vex sat in his new office, reviewing everything humanity had released publicly since the revelation. They had established diplomatic channels. They published basic information about Earth and human colonies. They offered trade opportunities in specific sectors. But they revealed very little about their military capabilities or strategic thinking. Torax, the young officer who had fired the torpedo, entered the office. He had been reassigned to Vex's division as Vex requested. The young warrior needed guidance, not punishment. His mistake had nearly cost everyone their lives, but it had also provided valuable intelligence. "Commander, I've compiled the reports you requested. Analysis of all human diplomatic contacts in the past week. They've met with 7 different species. In every case, they refused military alliances but offered trade agreements." Vex studied the data. A pattern was emerging. Humanity wanted economic and cultural relationships. They avoided military commitments. They positioned themselves as neutral parties who would trade with anyone but fight for no one. "It's a clever strategy," Vex said. "They make themselves valuable to everyone while threatening no one." Every species in the galaxy wants access to human technology, but humans will only share non-military knowledge. They keep their weapons secrets while building peaceful relationships. "Do you think it will work?" Torax asked. "In the short term, yes, but eventually someone will test them. Someone will try to steal their technology or attack their colonies. Then we'll see what humans really are. Are they truly committed to peace, or are they just waiting for the right moment to conquer?" "What do you think, Commander?" Vex thought about Captain Brooks, her calm demeanor, her willingness to show mercy, her clear warning about the consequences of aggression. "I think they mean what they say. They built strength to protect themselves, not to conquer others, but they will defend their interests ruthlessly if pushed. The galaxy needs to understand that balance." On Earth, in the headquarters of the United Earth government, officials worked frantically to manage humanity's sudden prominence. Every day brought new diplomatic requests, trade proposals, scientific exchange programs, cultural missions. The tiny diplomatic corps that had managed relations with a handful of known species suddenly needed to deal with dozens. Admiral Patricia Cole commanded the military response to the new situation. She sat in a planning meeting with representatives from every branch of Earth's armed forces. The agenda was simple but daunting. How does humanity defend itself now that everyone knows the truth? "The good news," Cole began, "is that the revelation seems to be working as intended. We're not seeing mass panic. No one's organizing military coalitions against us. Most species are responding with caution and interest rather than fear and aggression." "The bad news?" asked General Martinez, head of ground forces. "The bad news is that we've painted a target on ourselves. Every intelligence agency in the galaxy is trying to learn our secrets. Every military is trying to assess our weaknesses. And eventually, someone will try to test us." "So what's our posture?" Martinez asked. Cole pulled up a star map. "We maintain strong defensive positions around all human territory. We increase patrols in border regions. We station our most powerful ships at strategic locations. We make it very clear that while we're open to peaceful contact, we're ready for anything else." "What about technology sharing?" "We've promised to share non-military advances with species who establish trade agreements. We proceed carefully. We share improvements in agriculture, medicine, and industry, things that help people without making potential enemies stronger. We absolutely do not share anything related to weapons, shields, or propulsion systems." The meeting continued for several hours. They discussed contingency plans for various scenarios. What if the Zothran tried another approach? What if the Arkelians pushed harder for an alliance? What if some unknown species decided to test human defenses? For every possibility, they developed responses. Back aboard the Valiant, Helen received orders to extend her patrol. Earth Command wanted a strong presence in this region. The ship that had started the revelation would continue to show the flag, to demonstrate human capabilities, to remind everyone of what happened when someone made the mistake of attacking humanity. Helen didn't mind. She preferred being out here among the stars to dealing with politicians and bureaucrats back on Earth. The crew had settled into their new reality. They no longer pretended to be weak. They flew with their full capabilities visible. Other ships gave them wide berth. The reputation of the Valiant had spread across the sector. One quiet evening, Helen stood in the observation deck. The room was empty except for her. She liked coming here to think. The view was spectacular, stars in every direction, the infinite majesty of space. Corinne White found her there. The chief engineer carried 2 cups of coffee. She handed one to Helen. "Thought you might want this." "Thanks." Helen took the cup gratefully. "Couldn't sleep. Too much on my mind. I keep thinking about what we started, how one moment changed everything." Helen nodded. "I think about that too. Sometimes I wonder if we handled it right, if there was a better way. You did what needed to be done. The secret was coming out eventually. Better that it happened in a controlled situation with a smart captain making the decisions than in some chaotic battle where we had to use full force." "Maybe, but now we're living with the consequences. Every species in the galaxy knows about us. They're all trying to figure out what to do with this information. Some see opportunities, others see threats. Eventually, someone's going to make a move that forces us to respond." Corinne sipped her coffee. "When that happens, we'll be ready. That's what the Valiant is for. That's what all our ships are for. We built this strength for a reason. I just hope the reason stays valid, that we use this power wisely. We will, because we have people like you making the decisions, people who think about consequences, who choose restraint when possible and force only when necessary." Helen smiled. "That's optimistic of you. I'm an engineer. I solve problems. Right now the problem is that the galaxy doesn't know what to make of humanity, so we show them, one interaction at a time, one peaceful trade agreement, one diplomatic success. Eventually they'll understand we're not conquerors, we're just people who want to live in peace." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the stars. Helen felt some of her tension ease. Corinne was right. Humanity was handling this transition as well as could be expected. They were building relationships, establishing themselves as reliable partners, demonstrating strength without aggression. The next morning brought new challenges. A distress signal came from a civilian transport. The ship belonged to the Venturi Republic, one of the species that had established friendly relations with humanity. Pirates were attacking them. Their defensive systems had failed. They were requesting assistance from any nearby vessel. Helen made the decision immediately. "Navigation, plot an intercept course. Maximum speed. Tactical, prepare weapons but hold fire until we assess the situation." The Valiant leaped forward. Its powerful engines pushed the ship to speeds that would have seemed impossible weeks ago. They covered the distance to the distressed vessel in minutes instead of hours. When they arrived, the situation was clear. 3 pirate ships surrounded the Venturi transport. They had disabled the transport's engines and were preparing to board. The pirates used older military vessels, probably stolen or purchased on the black market, dangerous enough to threaten a civilian ship, completely inadequate against the Valiant. Helen opened a channel. "Pirate vessels, this is Captain Helen Brooks of the United Earthship Valiant. You are attacking a ship under distress protocols. Cease your actions immediately and withdraw. This is your only warning." One of the pirate ships responded. The captain appeared on screen. He was from a species Helen didn't recognize. Reptilian features with cold eyes. "Human ship, this doesn't concern you. Leave now and no one gets hurt." "I'm afraid I can't do that. The ship you're attacking has a valid distress signal. International law requires me to respond. Power down your weapons and prepare to be taken into custody." The pirate captain laughed. "You think one ship can take all 3 of us, even a human ship? We've heard the stories, but stories don't stop plasma torpedoes. Last chance, stand down or be disabled." "Try it, human," Helen nodded to Greg. "Disable their weapons and engines, non-lethal force." What happened next would be talked about across the sector for months. The Valiant didn't fire traditional weapons. Instead, it emitted a pulse of energy that washed over all 3 pirate ships simultaneously. The pulse was precisely calibrated. It disrupted power systems without causing structural damage or harming the crews. In seconds, all 3 pirate vessels went dark, their weapons offline, their engines dead, their life support still functioning but everything else shut down. They drifted helplessly in space, completely disabled by a single attack from the Valiant. Helen opened a channel to the Venturi transport. "This is Captain Brooks. The pirates have been neutralized. Are you in need of assistance?" The Venturi captain's relief was obvious. "Yes, Captain, our engines need repairs. We have injured crew members. We're defenseless." "Understood. We're dispatching repair teams and medical personnel. Sit tight. We'll have you operational within a few hours." Helen then contacted the nearest Venturi military station. "This is Captain Brooks of the Valiant. We have 3 disabled pirate vessels in custody at these coordinates. We're protecting a damaged Venturi transport. Request you send security forces to take custody of the prisoners and patrol vessels to escort the transport to safety." The response came back quickly. Venturi forces would arrive within 4 hours. In the meantime, the Valiant's crew worked to repair the transport and provide medical care. Helen's Marines boarded the pirate ships to secure the crews and prevent any escape attempts. By the time the Venturi military arrived, the situation was completely under control. The transport was repaired and ready to continue its journey. The pirates were disarmed and contained. No one had died, though several pirates had injuries from when their ships lost power suddenly. The Venturi commander thanked Helen personally. "Captain Brooks, on behalf of the Venturi Republic, I express our deepest gratitude. You saved lives today. You demonstrated the very best of what humanity claims to represent. This will not be forgotten." Helen nodded. "We were happy to help. I hope this shows that humanity's friendship is worth having. We may not offer military alliances, but we will come to the aid of any peaceful ship in distress." After the Venturi vessels departed with the pirates in custody, Helen called a meeting of her senior staff. They gathered in the conference room, everyone looking tired but satisfied. "That went well," Greg said. "We protected innocent civilians, stopped pirates without killing anyone, and strengthened our relationship with the Venturi. Earth Command should be pleased." "They will be," Helen agreed. "But this also shows something important. Everyone's watching us now. How we handle situations like this will define how the galaxy sees humanity. We need to be consistent, strong but fair, willing to help but not trying to control everything." Karen spoke up. "Do you think it will always be this clear-cut? Pirates attacking civilians is easy. Everyone agrees they're the bad guys. But what happens when the situation is more complex? When both sides have legitimate grievances?" "That's what worries me," Helen admitted. "Eventually we'll face a situation where there's no clear right answer, where intervening helps one side but angers another, where staying neutral feels like abandoning someone who needs help. Those will be the hard calls." "We'll deal with those when they come," Greg said. "For now, let's focus on what we did right. We showed strength and compassion. We proved that human power can be used for good. That's a win." The next few weeks followed a similar pattern. The Valiant continued its patrol. They encountered various situations that required intervention. A territorial dispute between 2 minor species, a natural disaster on a colony world, a medical emergency that required specialized equipment. In each case, Helen and her crew responded with competence and compassion. They helped when they could. They stayed neutral when involvement would have made things worse. They demonstrated that humanity could be both strong and wise. Word spread. Stories about the Valiant circulated through the sector. Some were accurate, others were exaggerated. A few were completely fabricated, but all of them contributed to humanity's growing reputation. The species that appeared from nowhere with overwhelming power. The people who hid their strength until forced to reveal it. The civilization that chose peace but could wage devastating war if necessary. In the Zothran capital, Commander Vex watched these developments closely. His intelligence division had become the foremost experts on humanity in the Dominion. They tracked every human ship movement. They analyzed every diplomatic contact. They tried to understand the pattern behind human behavior. Vex met regularly with Admiral Zarn to discuss their findings. At one such meeting, Zarn asked the question that had been bothering both of them. "Commander, what do humans really want? We've been studying them for weeks now. We understand their capabilities. We've analyzed their diplomatic strategies, but I still don't understand their ultimate goal." Vex had thought about this question constantly. I believe they want exactly what they say they want, to be left alone to develop their civilization in peace. Everything else flows from that core desire. They built overwhelming force so no one could threaten them. They offer trade and cooperation to make themselves valuable. They intervene in clear cases of injustice to show they're not just powerful but also principled. It all serves the same purpose, creating conditions where humanity can exist peacefully among other species. That's it. They don't want to conquer, to dominate, to reshape the galaxy according to their vision. I don't believe so. Of course, that could change. Future generations of humans might have different goals, but the current leadership seems genuinely committed to peace, with strength to back it up. Zarn nodded slowly. Then the Dominion needs to adjust our own strategies. We can't treat humans as potential conquest targets. They're too powerful, but we also can't ignore them. They're too influential, so we need to find ways to coexist. I recommend we focus on trade and cultural exchange. Show humans that the Dominion can be a responsible partner. Over time, build enough trust that they might consider security cooperation. Not an alliance against others, but mutual defense agreements. Agreed. Begin working on proposals, something the High Council can present to human diplomats. Back aboard the Valiant, Helen received a surprise communication. It came from Earth Command marked priority. She opened it in her ready room, expecting new orders or a mission update. Instead, she found something completely different. Admiral Cole appeared on her screen. Captain Brooks, I wanted to personally inform you of a decision made at the highest levels of government. Your actions over the past month have been exemplary. You revealed humanity's capabilities under difficult circumstances. You've handled countless diplomatic situations with skill. You've demonstrated what human values look like in action. Because of this, you're being promoted to Commodore and given command of a battle group. Helen was speechless for a moment. A battle group command was a huge responsibility. Multiple ships, larger operational area, more authority, more pressure. Thank you, Admiral, I'm honored. You've earned it, Commodore Brooks. Your new battle group will consist of 5 ships including the Valiant. Your mission is to continue what you've started, patrol the border regions, engage in diplomacy, respond to situations that require human presence. You'll have more resources and more flexibility in how you operate. Understood. When does this take effect? 2 weeks. That gives you time to prepare and for the other ships to reach your position. Congratulations, Commodore. Earth is proud of what you've accomplished. After the communication ended, Helen sat quietly. Her life was about to change again. More responsibility, more crew members depending on her decisions, more situations where she would need to balance human interests against the complex politics of the galaxy. But she was ready. The encounter with the Zothran had taught her important lessons. Sometimes strength had to be revealed. Sometimes mercy was more powerful than violence. Sometimes the hardest choice was the right one. She thought about the future. Humanity was still new to the galactic stage. There would be mistakes, conflicts, difficult decisions, but they would face these challenges with strength tempered by wisdom, with power guided by principles, with the goal of peace but the ability to wage war if necessary. Helen stood and looked out her window at the stars. Somewhere out there, other species were making their own decisions about humanity. Some would become friends, others would remain neutral, a few might become enemies. The galaxy was watching, waiting to see what humanity would do with its revealed power. The moment aliens scanned the human warship, chaos had broken out. But from that chaos, new possibilities emerged. Relationships formed. Understanding grew. The galaxy became a little less hostile and a little more cooperative. Not perfect, not peaceful everywhere, but better than before. And Helen would continue to play her part in shaping that future, one decision at a time, one encounter at a time, one demonstration of human character at a time. The revelation was just the beginning. Now came the harder work of proving that humanity deserved respect not just because of their power, but because of how they chose to use it. The following weeks brought steady growth for humanity's presence in the sector. Helen's promotion became official, and 4 more ships joined the Valiant to form Battle Group 7. Each vessel was powerful in its own right. Together, they represented humanity's commitment to maintaining peace while remaining prepared for any threat. The USS Phoenix served as the battle group's heavy weapons platform. Its captain, Nathan Cooper, had 20 years of experience in space combat. He ran his ship with precision and discipline. The Phoenix specialized in long-range engagements and could eliminate targets from halfway across a star system. The USS Horizon was the group's scout and intelligence vessel. Captain Linda Price commanded a crew of specialists who could gather information from electronic signals, sensor readings, and visual observation. The Horizon could move faster than any other ship in the fleet, making it perfect for reconnaissance missions. The USS Guardian served as the group's defensive anchor. Captain Marcus Webb had built his reputation on protecting others. His ship carried advanced shield generators and point defense systems. When other vessels needed protection, the Guardian provided it without fail. Finally, the USS Endeavour functioned as the group's support ship. Captain Sarah Mitchell oversaw engineering support, medical facilities, and supply operations. When any ship in the group needed repairs or resupply, the Endeavour made it happen. Helen held her first meeting with all the captains via secure communication. Their faces appeared on screens in the Valiant's conference room. She looked at each of them, seeing competence and determination in their expressions. Thank you all for joining Battle Group 7. Our mission is straightforward but challenging. We patrol the border regions of human space. We engage with alien species in peaceful contexts. We respond to threats when they emerge, and we demonstrate through our actions what humanity stands for. Nathan Cooper spoke first. Commodore, what are the rules of engagement? When can we use force? Self-defense is always authorized. Defense of human ships or installations is authorized. Defense of Allied vessels under attack is authorized with my approval. But I want to be clear on something. We're not looking for fights. We're here to prevent them. Our strength is most useful when we don't have to use it. Linda Price asked the next question. What about intelligence gathering? Are we authorized to conduct surveillance on alien species? Passive surveillance only. We monitor communications and sensor readings that are openly broadcast. We do not hack into alien systems. We do not plant spy devices. We do not conduct covert operations. Transparency is important to our mission. Marcus Webb nodded approvingly. What if we encounter situations where the right course of action isn't clear, where both sides of a conflict have legitimate points? Then we stay neutral unless human interests are directly involved. We can offer to mediate. We can provide humanitarian assistance, but we don't take sides in other species' conflicts unless absolutely necessary. Sarah Mitchell had a practical question. What about our operational schedule? How long do we stay on patrol before rotating back to Earth? 6-month deployments. After that, we'll rotate back for maintenance and crew rest. The battle group will remain on station with replacement ships filling in temporarily. I want everyone at their best. That means proper rest and recovery time. They discussed logistics for another hour, communication protocols, emergency procedures, coordination tactics. By the end of the meeting, everyone understood their role in the battle group. They formed a team now, 5 ships working together toward common goals. Helen's first major test as battle group commander came 2 weeks later. Intelligence reports indicated a potential conflict brewing between 2 species in a neighboring sector. The Qresh Coalition and the Branthai Federation had been arguing over resource rights in an asteroid belt. Tensions were rising. Ships from both sides had deployed to the area. Helen called a staff meeting. All her captains attended, either in person or via communication link. She displayed the tactical situation on the main screen. 2 fleets facing each other across an asteroid field. Neither had fired yet, but both were in attack positions. This could go bad quickly, Nathan Cooper observed. If shooting starts, both sides will suffer heavy losses. Do we have any relationship with either species? Helen asked. Linda Price consulted her files. We've had minor trade contacts with the Qresh. Nothing significant with the Branthai. Neither species is hostile to humanity, but neither is particularly friendly either. So we have no obligation to intervene. No formal obligation, Marcus Webb said. But if we can prevent a war, shouldn't we try? Helen considered carefully. This was exactly the kind of situation she had worried about. Getting involved risked making enemies, but standing by while thousands died seemed wrong too. Can the Endeavor handle casualties from both sides if fighting breaks out? We can handle some, not all. If both fleets really go at each other, the casualties will overwhelm any medical facility in the sector. Then we try to prevent it, but carefully. Linda, I want full intelligence on both species, their capabilities, their leadership, their cultural approaches to conflict. Nathan, plot intercept courses for the entire battle group. We'll position ourselves between the two fleets. Marcus, if anyone fires on us, I want shields up and ready, but no return fire without my direct order. The battle group moved into position over the next 6 hours. They approached the contested area carefully, making no aggressive moves. When they arrived, Helen broadcast on all channels. Attention Qresh Coalition and Branthe Federation forces. This is Commodore Helen Brooks of the United Earth Forces. We have no claim on this territory. We have no interest in your dispute. But we are concerned that conflict here will result in unnecessary loss of life on both sides. We request both fleets stand down while we facilitate negotiations. The response from the Qresh came first. Human vessel, this matter does not concern your species. We ask that you withdraw. The Branthe commander sent a similar message. We appreciate your concern, but this is a matter between the coalition and the Federation. Outside interference is not welcome. Helen had expected these responses. Neither side wanted to look weak by accepting help, but neither wanted to reject humanity's offer outright. They knew what happened to species who attacked human vessels. I understand your positions. However, I'm going to make you both an offer. We will establish a neutral zone in this asteroid belt. Neither of your fleets will enter it for 72 hours. During that time, representatives from both sides will meet on my ship to discuss the resource dispute. We will facilitate the discussion but not impose solutions. If you can't reach agreement in 72 hours, we withdraw and you do what you must, but at least you'll have tried negotiation before resorting to violence. Silence followed for several minutes. Helen waited patiently. Both commanders were probably consulting with their governments. This kind of decision went beyond local authority. Finally, the Qresh commander responded. We accept your proposal. But we expect the Federation to negotiate in good faith. The Branthe commander agreed moments later. We also accept, though we doubt the coalition will be reasonable. Helen allowed herself a small smile. Excellent. Both fleets will withdraw to positions at least 100,000 kilometers from the asteroid belt. Representatives will arrive on the Valiant in 6 hours. Come prepared to discuss your positions and potential compromises. Over the next 3 days, Helen hosted some of the most difficult negotiations she had ever witnessed. The Qresh and Branthe had legitimate grievances on both sides. The asteroid belt contained rare elements both civilizations needed. Historical claims overlapped. Economic interests conflicted. Cultural differences complicated every discussion. Helen served as moderator, not mediator. She kept the talks moving. She prevented them from devolving into shouting matches. She asked questions that forced both sides to consider the other's perspective, but she never told them what to do. That had to come from them. On the 3rd day, exhausted representatives from both sides finally reached an agreement. The asteroid belt would be divided into sections. The Qresh would have primary rights in areas with certain mineral compositions. The Branthe would control regions with different resources. Both sides would share information about asteroid movements and potential hazards. A joint monitoring station would ensure compliance. It wasn't perfect. Neither side got everything they wanted, but it prevented a war. Thousands of lives saved because both sides chose to talk instead of fight. After the signing ceremony, the Qresh commander approached Helen privately. Commodore Brooks, I want to thank you, not just for hosting these negotiations, but for the way you handled them. You didn't try to impose human solutions on non-human problems. You trusted us to find our own answer. That's the only way it works. You and the Branthe have to live with whatever agreement you make. If I had forced a solution, you would resent it. This way, you own the outcome. Still, without your intervention, we would have fought. Many would have died. You prevented that. Helen nodded. That's what we're trying to do out here, not control the galaxy, Just help prevent unnecessary conflicts, be a voice for peaceful solutions. After both fleets departed, Helen gathered her captains again. They reviewed the mission, analyzing what went right and what could have been handled better. Sarah Mitchell pointed out that having better translation protocols would have helped. Linda Price suggested doing more background research on cultural differences before similar situations. Nathan Cooper recommended positioning the battle group more strategically to deter any aggressive moves during negotiations. Helen took notes on everything. Every mission taught lessons. Every situation revealed areas for improvement. Battle Group 7 was becoming more effective with each operation. Word of the successful negotiation spread quickly. Other species took notice. The humans weren't just powerful. They were also diplomatic. They could facilitate peace without demanding anything in return. This made humanity even more valuable as a neutral party in galactic affairs. Diplomatic requests increased. Several species asked humanity to mediate their disputes. Others requested human observers at peace talks. A few wanted human forces to patrol contested regions to deter aggression. Helen had to decline most requests. Battle Group 7 couldn't be everywhere. They had to prioritize situations where their presence could make the most difference. This meant choosing which conflicts to address and which to leave for others to resolve. It was frustrating. Helen wanted to help everyone. But spreading the battle group too thin would make them ineffective. Better to focus on situations where they could actually make a difference. 3 months into her command, Helen received an urgent message from Earth. Admiral Cole appeared on her screen looking troubled. "Commodore Brooks, we have a situation. One of our science vessels, the USS Discovery, has gone missing. They were conducting research in an unexplored system. Their last transmission indicated they found something interesting." Then communications went silent. "We haven't heard from them in 48 hours. Helen felt her stomach tight. A missing ship meant crew members in danger, possibly dead. "Do we have their last known position?" "Yes, I'm sending you the coordinates now. The Discovery had a crew of 80, scientists mostly, with a small security detachment. The ship was lightly armed, designed for research, not combat." "Understood. Battle Group 7 will investigate immediately." "Be careful, Commodore. We don't know what happened to them. Could be a natural phenomenon, could be hostile action, could be a mechanical failure. Proceed with caution." Helen immediately ordered the battle group to the Discovery's last known position. They traveled at maximum speed, pushing their engines harder than usual. Every hour that passed reduced the chances of finding survivors. The system the Discovery had been exploring was remote. No known intelligent life. No previous visits by human ships. Just a yellow star with 7 planets, several asteroid belts, and the usual collection of comets and debris. When Battle Group 7 arrived, Linda Price began scanning immediately. The Horizon sensors were the most sensitive in the group. If there were any traces of the Discovery, Linda would find them. "Contact," Linda reported after 10 minutes. "I'm detecting wreckage in orbit around the 4th planet. Definitely human origin. Also reading life pod signatures. At least 6 pods deployed." Relief flooded through Helen. Life pods meant survivors. "All ships, rescue stations. Find those life pods and recover them. Linda, keep scanning. I want to know what happened to the Discovery." Over the next hour, the battle group recovered 12 life pods containing 43 survivors. The ship's captain, Daniel Foster, was among them. Medical teams treated the survivors for injuries and exposure. Most were in reasonable condition considering their ordeal. Helen met with Captain Foster in the Valiant's medical bay. He looked exhausted and shaken. "What happened, Daniel?" "We found ruins, Commodore, ancient structures on the 4th planet, clearly artificial, millions of years old. We sent a team down to investigate. That's when they appeared." "Who appeared?" "Machines. Autonomous defense systems left behind by whoever built those ruins. They must have been dormant for ages. Our presence triggered them. They attacked without warning. Destroyed the Discovery before we could escape. We barely got the life pods away." Helen felt a chill. Ancient alien technology still operating after millions of years, still defending its creator's ruins. "Did you lose anyone?" Foster's expression darkened. 37 crew members, including the entire landing party. They were on the surface when the machines activated. I saw them on sensors. Then they were gone. I'm sorry, Daniel. We'll recover what we can of their remains. Careful down there, Commodore. Those machines are still active, still dangerous. Helen considered the situation carefully. They needed to understand what happened, to determine if this ancient technology posed a threat to other human ships, but she wouldn't risk her crews unnecessarily. Nathan, I want the Phoenix and Guardian to establish a defensive perimeter around the fourth planet. If anything comes up from the surface, I want to know about it immediately. Linda, scan that planet thoroughly. Find those defensive installations. Map their capabilities and locations. Sarah, take the Endeavor and recover the Discovery's wreckage. Salvage what you can, especially the sensor logs and communication records. Over the next 2 days, they learned more about the ancient ruins and their guardians. The planet had once been home to an advanced civilization. They had disappeared millions of years ago, but their automated defenses remained functional. The machines detected intrusions and eliminated them. Efficiently, ruthlessly, without warning or mercy, Helen faced a difficult decision. The ruins represented an incredible archaeological find. Humanity could learn valuable information about this ancient civilization, but the defensive systems made any investigation extremely dangerous. Was the knowledge worth the risk? She consulted with her captains and with the surviving scientists from the Discovery. Everyone agreed the ruins were important. But they also agreed that current technology wasn't adequate to safely explore them. The defensive systems were too sophisticated, too quick, too lethal. Helen made her recommendation to Earth Command: quarantine the system, mark it as hazardous, return when humanity developed better countermeasures for the ancient technology. Don't risk more lives in a premature attempt to explore the ruins. Earth Command accepted her recommendation. The system was marked on all navigation charts as restricted. Warning buoys were deployed. Future missions would be better prepared. Captain Foster and his survivors were transported back to Earth aboard the Endeavor. Foster faced an inquiry about the loss of his ship. Helen testified on his behalf. Foster had followed proper protocols. The attack had come without warning from technology no one knew existed. He couldn't have prevented it. The inquiry cleared Foster of wrongdoing. But Helen knew he would carry the weight of those lost crew members for the rest of his life. That was the burden of command, making decisions that affected other people's lives, living with the outcomes. The incident with the Discovery reminded everyone that space remained dangerous. Humanity might be powerful compared to other known species, but the galaxy held mysteries that predated all current civilizations, ancient technologies, unknown phenomena. Threats that no amount of firepower could completely eliminate. Helen sat in her ready room late one evening, reviewing reports. 6 months had passed since she took command of Battle Group 7. 6 months of diplomatic missions, rescue operations, and representing humanity to the galaxy. 6 months of successes and failures, of lives saved and lives lost. Greg Palmer entered with 2 cups of coffee. He had been promoted to full commander and now served as Helen's executive officer for the entire battle group, not just the Valiant. Thought you might want this. Thanks. Helen accepted the cup gratefully. What's on your mind? I was thinking about how far we've come. 6 months ago, we were just a single ship revealing humanity's secret. Now we're a battle group. We've prevented wars, saved lives, built relationships with dozens of species. We've made a real difference out here. We've also lost people, the Discovery's crew, those sailors who died when we couldn't reach them in time. Every success comes with costs. True, but that doesn't diminish what we've accomplished. We're changing how the galaxy works, showing that power doesn't have to mean domination, that strength can serve peace instead of war. Helen smiled slightly. When did you become a philosopher? I always was, you just never asked. They sat quietly for a moment. Outside the window, stars filled the darkness. Somewhere among those points of light, other battles were being fought, other decisions were being made. Other species were choosing their paths forward, but here, in this small corner of the galaxy, humanity was making its voice heard. Not through conquest or threat, but through example, through action, through demonstrating that another way was possible. Helen raised her coffee cup. To the future, whatever it brings. Greg raised his cup in return. To the future, may we be ready for it. As they drank, Helen felt a sense of purpose. The chaos that followed humanity's revelation had settled into something more stable, not perfect, not without challenges, but better than many had feared and full of possibilities few had imagined. The moment aliens scanned the human warship had changed everything. The chaos that followed had been intense, but from that chaos emerged opportunities, relationships, understanding. A path forward that no one could have predicted but many could work toward together. Helen set down her empty cup and returned to her reports. There was always more work to be done, more situations to evaluate, more decisions to make, but she faced them with confidence now. Battle Group 7 had proven itself. Humanity had proven itself. The galaxy was learning that humans could be trusted, that their power served principles worth respecting. The future remained uncertain. But Helen was ready to face it, one day at a time, one decision at a time, one mission at a time, building the kind of galaxy where all species could coexist, where power and wisdom went hand in hand, where chaos could be transformed into order through patience, strength, and unwavering commitment to doing what was right.